Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how young adults, children 18 to say 21, 22 years old, are suckered and drawn into voting for radical green policies. Now, we've seen this in the Australian federal election the people of Australia voted on this weekend just gone, and there was a number of candidates that were single issue candidates, just pushing, absolutely Armageddon type green propaganda. It was laughably absurd, and some of them were so piss poor as candidates, in my opinion, that they shouldn't have got elected to sweep the floor, let alone represent the people in a federal parliament. But it's in keeping with the incredible decline in standards of the sort of politicians that represent us. And why do we need politicians that represent the people and do the heavy policy lifting when the globalists control everything? The party machines that the globalists control make sure that we get IQ 80 morons going into parliament, and the globalists and the party machines are certainly delivering splendidly on that front. But coming back to the votes now, in a number of seats, and even in the electoral districts where they didn't win, these single issue candidates got up to 40% of the vote, with preferences and so on. Just a quick word on preferences for folks outside of Australia. If a candidate doesn't win an outright majority in the vote in an electoral district, they do what's called preference deals, so that the candidates that came, below second, third place, and so on, they do preference deals that can tip someone over the 50% threshold and give them. So usually it's the top two top two candidates. So if it's close, and then sometimes the preferences given by the third candidate can help the second candidate win, and so on. But it's a way of making sure that there's no runoff needed, and there's technically at least an absolute majority achieved. So coming back to these, none of these single issue green candidates that were, by the way, funded by a very, very rich straight white male globalist. So I don't know if the kids voting for the candidates thought about that, but anyway, these candidates didn't win an outright majority, but on preferences, they've won. I think it may be three electoral districts, and which is no small achievement given that they didn't even exist a few months ago. And again, they're a single issue party with very, very, in my opinion, very unimpressive candidates, but they still managed to get up and win, as I say, probably three. But just looking at these, they're all inner city type electoral districts, where you'd expect to see, these people that live in areas where there's barely a tree in sight, and they run around talking about global warming and climate change and so on. Now, just doing a bit of a drill down though on the sort of people that were voting for this, overwhelmingly young people who are voting for the first time voted for these single issue candidates. And it was a form of protest vote, because the entire education establishment in Australia, and indeed the Western world, has radicalized children on climate change issues, that Armageddon is round the next corner. Now they're filled and pumped with emotional, catchy phrases. We're all going to die, and Greta Thunberg, and all these sorts of things. They don't seem to see the propaganda side of it, and they go along. It must be a reasonably clever sort of appeal. Your life is meaningless; it's going nowhere. You have no purpose in life, but you can, we can turn you into an ideological hooker, and you can sell your stupidity, and in return, we'll give you the comfort of knowing that you've contributed to destruction of Western society. But they're particularly young girls. Now, if you look at certainly the breakdowns that I've managed to see and to discuss with some other parties, and young girls have really gone for this climate change stuff. Not so much the young boys. There are some young, so it's young girls in particular. Overwhelmingly young girls were voting for these single issue Green candidates, and then you get the males on the periphery. The homosexuals and the lesbians, the transgenders. They all sort of love this one as well, so they go into it. Now, I don't think there's been any society or civilization ever in the history of the world where young women have been so successfully drawn into voting for and protesting for the destruction of their own civilization. I don't think it's ever happened before. So these young girls are voting for these single issue candidates. Now these Green candidates want to radically accelerate, as I understand it, the moving away from fossil fuels. Now, if you look at the cost projections of doing that, and this assumes masses of taxpayer money being thrown at it in terms of subsidies and so on, which will make some of the investors who've invested in green, an economical green energy that wouldn't have a snowball's chance of getting up without massive government subsidies and handouts. It'll make some of those people very, very rich, and which is part of the globalist scam as well. I don't know if these kids even think about that when they're voting. I don't think they do. So, but there's a few sort of people I know. There's a family where they, all the girls live at home. There's 3 girls between the ages of 18 and 23. They all live at home. They're all fervent. They're either just finished high school or they're in college, and they're fervent supporters of radical green policies, on the basis if nothing is done, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, I tell you. And if anyone thinks otherwise, suggests otherwise, or even questions that, then they're Hitler! So these young girls voted for these radical green candidates, and that's fine. Okay, if they've got the vote and they're allowed to do that, but they've had at least 10 plus years of radicalisation through the education system, where every teacher, every authority figure within the establishment, they've brought in radical speakers from all over the place to tell them that the place is ending. They've watched insane propaganda movies that say the polar bears are all dying, and there'll be little shots of little baby animals dying, and that's it. Climate change did that. Climate change. Hitler did it. And these young girls have all been sucked out. They all cry in the classroom, and then they hug each other and cry, "We're going to do something about this. We're not going to let those terrible white Nazi fascist Hitlers do this. We're going to do something." So off they go, and they vote at elections, and they go running around protesting and waving placards, and they think they're as edgy as shit. I mean, we're sticking it to the man. We're standing up to the damn fascist Nazi Hitlers that have done this to the world, done that to little baby animals. Hitlers! And we're going to fight back, us girls, with our snotty little attitude. So these 3 girls, anyway, they voted for these single issue green candidates. Now, they all live at home, and dad's got certainly an well above average income, and he's also inherited quite well. So they live in a big house with every room's got an air conditioning, internally ducted air conditioning. Every room's got an air conditioning duct. They've got they can cook and do whatever they want when they want. They've all got a car each, which they do. They don't use public transport. Public transport is for fucking peasants. So they've all got an internal combustion car each, and they go out to restaurants. They'll order pizza in, and And the guy comes around in a little car, and it's not an electric car that delivers the pizzas that are cooked in an electric oven, and they've got all the mod cons and electrical gadgets in their house, and they've got the swimming pool that's heated, of course. And, Daddy, we can't have a swimming pool. It's cold in the winter. We have to have a heated one. But wait a minute. What about all that electricity? Well, so. And they go to college, and they go out to their parties, and they've got their money, and they don't go without anything. Um, all the bills are paid for by Daddy, and they can live this blissful existence of pretending they're being edgy and really getting out there and sticking it to the man, while in fact Daddy is paying all the bills, and they can blissfully forget about any of the realities of life, and they can concentrate on their activism and their emotional take on these things, and they're all, I mean, emotionally, they all seem to be about 14 years old, but anyway, that's the thing that they're into. Now, if you ask them, well, okay, the planet's going to end, and you've voted for these single issue candidates to get rid of electricity and so on. What about if your dad said that you had to pay for the electricity you use in the house? And if you couldn't pay it, then there's no more heated pool. You've got to pay for the gasoline and petroleum in your car, and maybe every kilometre travel you have to be taxed. So why don't you use public transport, and why don't you go without your pizzas being delivered, and why don't you walk to the shops instead of? And horrified, you've got to be kidding! Why should we sacrifice anything? And the sacrifice we made is going to the election booth and casting a vote for the radical green candidate. That's what we've done. But wait a minute, what about if electricity doubles and you have to pay that? The price of electricity doubles, you have to pay. Oh, no. That's for other people to pay. No, other people have to suffer that way. We don't. We're the morally superior ones that are making sure the others do what they're supposed to do. But the pain shouldn't be ours. We should suffer no pain. We should go without nothing. We're the ones telling the others to be good, because we're so fucking morally superior. Now, you could also have, there's a guy. He's a gay guy, and he's kind of a bum. He goes to university, goes for a year, and then decides to give up that course and get another one. The folks are paying for it all, and he lives at home with his folks, and he just like if it's a cold day or a hot day, he just puts the air conditioning on. Should he worry about sectioning it off that only his room or that half or quarter of the house room? Not at all. Not at all. He just puts it on, and an electricity bill comes in that's absolutely astronomical. Well, Mum and Dad can pay for that. It's not mine. Well, why should I go cold? Why should I, go without anything? It's Mum and Dad can pay for it, but I tell you something, I'm going to make sure those damn fascist Nazis that they're brought to book for the climate change disasters they've inflicted upon us. Those low-life Hitler fascists. And I'm going to vote for that single-issue candidate because I'm out there suffering for the people. Okay, well that's great, but why don't you go without something? Why don't you go without all this air conditioning and all the gadgets, your car, and why don't you go without? Oh no, I'm not going without. So this is the same as Leonardo DiCaprio going on his private Learjet halfway around the world to collect a prize for his great work on stopping climate change. These are people who've got massive footprints, and only because someone else is paying it are they able to pretend that footprint doesn't exist. And none of them are prepared to give up a thing. Now, because they come from wealthier households, one assumes they may not have to suffer as the rest of the population does. But 3/4 plus of the population are going to suffer, and suffer considerably as a consequence of these prices electricity prices going up in the move to alternative energy, which is nowhere near technologically ready to be used to replace the fossil fuels. One day it will be, and that's fine. When that day comes, absolutely fine. No problem with that at all. But until that day comes, a bit of reality, please. And these kids who've been turned into hookers for the cause have got no concept of that reality. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.